but I don't have any ambulances. So let's just talk about Python at the Ministry of Health. My name is Marc. That's my Twitter handle. I almost never tweet. So if you follow me, you won't be seeing anything. But if you send a message, I'll get it. So that works. As David says, I've been doing Python programming since about 2004. Actually came to Python from C#. And before C#, I was doing a lot of VB7, VB6, and before that was VB script with ASP, and you know, Microsoft had my head. Then I met Debian, and oh, she's just been lovely since. I like to talk about free software. I try to spread free software wherever I go, and that last line, software socialist, really, I mean it. So it means that software is here for all of us, and we should try to make it work for all of us and share ideas. I am vehemently opposed to the idea of software patents, because you can't patent math. I think you shouldn't be able to patent software. So that's part of my thing. So for those of us that don't know, Ministry of Health is the organization locally, like the overall organization that's responsible for policy and determining what happens as far as healthcare is concerned locally. And then it is the regional health authorities that is responsible for actually delivering healthcare. So if you go to, say, KPH is managed and run by the Southeast Regional Health Authority. If you go to Cornwall Regional in Mobay, that's the Western Regional Health Authority. So I have 4 of them. There's West. I don't know if you know the lay of the island much, but Western region is Westmoreland, St. James, Hanover, and Trelawney. Northeast region is St. Anne, St. Mary, Portland. And the Southeast region is the biggest region, St. Thomas, Kingston, and St. Andrew, St. Catherine. And then the other 3 make up the Southern region. So sometime, this actually starts at 2012, but I'm going to start in 99. In 99, a company from Canada called Heron Technologies, managed to sell the ministry some hospital management software. They call it Heron Pass, Patient Administration System. I'm not sure if it's because of cost or other issues, but that system only ever made it into 11 of 24 hospitals. So I have 24 hospitals in the island, and that system is only in 11 of them. They tried to get it into the others, but various issues. Between 99 and 2016, that system has been upgraded exactly 0 times. So I'm talking about a situation where I get called to fix a server in Mandeville Hospital, and I get to that server and it's running Red Hat Linux 4. I didn't say Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you know. Red Hat Linux 4 from like 98. That's depressing at best. So some people within the ministry understood the problem, recognized that they needed change. And so in 2012, the eHealth strategic plan, eHealth strengthening strategic plan was hatched by some folks in the ministry. Between 2012 and 2013, they reviewed quite a few systems, some commercial systems, some open source systems. They looked at a few things, trying to determine what's going to be next after Heron Pass. They contacted Heron as well, actually, and Heron didn't seem to be too interested then. That was in 2012. GNU Health, which I'll talk about soon, that was chosen as a platform for going forward. And as things typically go in government, if you want to do something big, you have to start small. So GNU Health, along with some other, experiments, let's call them, became part of what they call a pilot project. And that pilot project started in late 2013. So some folks from the GNU Health community came to Jamaica and met with folks at the Ministry of Health, and they had a couple of consults, and they decided, okay, we're going with this open source platform, GNU Health. But they needed help. because it's written in Python. And, well, none of the developers that were working at the ministry at the time knew anything about Python other than there's a snake by that name or something. So they knew nothing. They also didn't know much about revision control and a couple other things. So the ministry decided to seek help, seek some outside help. Somehow, I got the job. And I joined the team in the middle of 2014. When I joined the team, my job was to help the developers that they already had figure out what was going on, and I was to stay there for 6 months. So from June to January, that's it. I was show them what's happening, and I'm out. The first week I was there, one of their developers resigned. By the end of the third week, the second developer resigned. So I started in June as the person that was supposed to help the developers. By the middle of July, I was the only developer. So what do we do at that point? Well, we kind of just make things work, right? That slide is not supposed to have that there, but don't worry about it. So since 2014, so you understand, we started 2014. In 2014, we really were just working on GNU Health, right? But GNU Health itself is based on Triton. Triton is a platform upon which it stands. So if you've heard of Django or Flask or Odoo, OpenERP, TinyERP, they've changed their name a few times. Yeah, so sometime back then when it was still TinyERP, some of the folks working with the company actually left that company and forked TinyERP and made Triton. And then close to that time, some folks in Argentina was doing healthcare work in rural Argentina, and they needed software to help them do their job. So they made this thing that they called Medical. That's it. It was just called Medical. They speak Spanish, so Medical is okay. Sometime after that, those medical folks converted what they made that was supposed to run on TinyERP to run on Triton. So that's how that's how Medical became the thing that runs on Triton. And that process of converting to Triton was partly influenced by Richard Stallman, because the folks that made that medical software impressed him somewhat, and he was trying to convince them to say, come into the GNU fold. So it is because they wanted to go GNU why they had to go free. So they couldn't work with something like TinyERP, where every new version you have to either reinstall or pay Tiny to upgrade the database for you. Not that cool, not free, certainly not free. So GNU Health was born as a thing that runs on Triton. We know what Flask is. So what I have on this slide is the list of the biggest things that we use as far as Python-based platforms at the Ministry of Health. And what I'm going to do over the next few minutes is talk about what we use each one of these for. So I already mentioned GNU Health and Triton, told you how I got to the ministry. And so I want to talk a little bit about each of these. Maybe not in the same order they're listed, but it's fine. Anybody know what Moin is? It's a wiki engine. It seems to be the most popular Python-based wiki engine, but definitely not the most popular wiki engine. Mediawiki is quite famous. That's what Wikipedia uses. And I think everybody else just kind of goes, oh yeah, we'll use what Wikipedia uses. But I don't like it because it's written in PHP. So we use it to host our project website, the same pilot project I mentioned before. So the project website is at that URL, and if you hit that URL, you are actually looking at a Moin wiki that we have, added pages to basically. So that's I think, the simplest of the things that we use that's based on Python. I already mentioned GNU Health, and GNU Health itself is based on Triton. Triton is the platform. So to answer the question of what Triton is, from their website, they say Triton is a 3-tier, high-level, general-purpose application platform. We're not going to talk about the license because duh. Written in Python, and it uses PostgreSQL as a database. I think that's good. Both the baby and the PostgreSQL. Good stuff. So, anybody here have any experience at all with Triton? Anybody ever installed it, used it at all? Oh, you have. Those two fellows around there. You've installed it. And all right. One of the things I can tell you about Triton, I don't have many slides on Triton, just this one. But the documentation sucks. It's really, really bad. I mean, if I was at the ministry when they started this process, I would have said, no Triton, so anything else. But I was thrown into it. So when I got there, they had already made a choice. They had already chosen GNU Health. And so we were kind of stuck with Triton. Understanding here that the people making the decisions are like doctors and administrators, and IT staff is last to hear about stuff. Right? So I met Triton at the ministry. And one thing I can tell you, even though the documentation is horrible, it's Python, right? So the code is super easy to read. And the code happens to be one of the best sources of documentation there is. So that's how we managed to learn Triton and get going with it. We will be publishing some more stuff, as in the Ministry of Health and the National Health Information System. That's what NHIS is for on that slide. So NHIS right there is for National Health Information System. And that is literally national level. We're trying to get this thing in every hospital, every health center across the island. That's how free software helps us. Flask is a web application framework of sorts, micro framework they call themselves. We use Flask for simple things. So EPAS is the name we have given to our version of GNU Health because we have modified it quite heavily. And we use Flask to create a REST API to that. And then we also use Flask to make a web app that talks to that web REST API. And so we do things like, if you go to the doctor and your fever is quite high and you have a rash, it means you could have yellow fever, you could have chick V, you could have Zika V, you could have one of many communicable diseases. And the way the government kind of manages all of these things is through a system they call Class 1 notifications. So they have a list of Class 1 diseases, and if someone shows up presents at a health center or hospital with one of these diseases or with symptoms that may indicate one of these diseases, then it is required that that healthcare professional notify the ministry of this patient. So we are using Flask to build a web app that will allow all doctors, private, public, whether they have computers in health center or not, to be able to submit these notifications digitally. As it is now, I mean, not today now, 2 weeks ago, everybody uses paper. And there are these little forms that you have to fill out, and if you don't have that form, usually nobody submits it. If you can't find the form, to hell with it. And so because of that, you have situations where some of you might remember last year when Chick V was a big issue. The government, it's still an issue because we still have mosquitoes, right? But last year, government was reporting that we have, 300 cases of Chick V, and each one of us knew 300 people that had Chick V, and it wasn't the same 300. So you understand that things were really not being reported properly. This year, the start of this year, things got really hairy. We started hearing about Zika virus coming out of South America. We started hearing about more people with chick-V. Yellow fever became a problem. And so at the start of this year, we did a thing using Python and Triton to effectively give the epidemiology unit a system to use so that they can stop using Excel. So they were using a bunch of spreadsheets. So yeah, they were using some spreadsheets. I remember the first spreadsheet I got to import had about 1,500 rows and about 60 columns. And each column was something different. Like, so you had first name, middle name, last name, date of birth, and then they had age as a column. And you'd have a good 15 columns with just signs and symptoms. So you have fever and rash and that. And then in the rows, you just have yes, no, yes, no. And that's how they were doing the tracking. So these paper forms would come in by fax, and some of them would be dropped by fax. Yes, they still use fax. So some of these paper forms would come in by fax, and somebody would literally sit down and type this into that spreadsheet. But of course, they have issues when now you have 6 people working on data, and all 6 of them, what happened here? Do I need a password? Oh, awesome, cool. And all 6 of them are using, they can't update the same spreadsheet, obviously. So they have 6 copies of the spreadsheet now, and then one person has the job to try to merge them back, and it was a mess. Now, they have what we call the disease notifications module in EPAS. And that same module is installed in each place, in each health center and hospital that we have EPAS. So now a patient presents with a particular condition, the doctor fills out the form on screen and just hits save. I'll tell you how you get to the epi unit shortly. So this class 1 notifications thing, what we've used Flask for is to allow private doctors and doctors in health centers that don't yet have EPAS to be able to submit notifications digitally. And I can say, like 3 weeks ago, I got an email to say the arbovirus backlog has been cleared. They have no more backlog. They're only dealing with, right now, notifications. So that's awesome. Sphinx. Anybody here ever use Sphinx? 1, 2. All right. Well, we use it for 3 things. Documentation, documentation, and documentation. Originally, when I was just the programmer, someone wrote all the documentation for our EPAS in Word. And then 10 minutes later, somebody said, can you change that field over there? And so the screen changed, and now the Word document is outdated. And a few minutes later, screen changed again, and the Word document became even more outdated. Now, how do you version control Word? How do you keep a Word document in sync with code? Anybody can tell me? I have no idea. Email. Or fax, yeah. So what we did was we converted the entire Word document, took out all the screenshots, everything, converted the whole thing to restructured text. And now we use Sphinx to take that folder full of restructured text files and generate a single PDF. We also take the same folder full of restructured text files and generate online documentation. And for some, like nurses, for example, they all have these big screen phones and they'd like to have the documentation nearby. So we have EPUB versions of the documentation as well. And it's all from the same restructured text source. And it's kept in the same repository as the code. So when you update the code, you can update the documentation right away. Super useful. Barman. I suspect nobody here has heard of Barman. You have? Awesome. All right. Barman stands for different bar. Actually, the website is PG Barman, so maybe I should have put that there. But Barman is the backup and restoration manager for PostgreSQL. Now, it is by far, I think, by far the coolest tool in the arsenal. It is like super cool. So how are we using Barman? As I told you, we have 4 regional head offices. Southern region head office is in Mandeville. Western region head office is in Montego Bay. Northeast region head office is in Ocho Rios. And Southeast region head office is in New Kingston. And if you know the island, you'll know that of those 4 places I just mentioned, the one that is highest and least likely to flood is Mandeville. So that's where my database backup is. So I back up all databases to this server farm that's in Mandeville, and it's all run in Barman. And when I say backup, I mean every Saturday, well, Saturday for health centers, Sunday for hospitals, but you get the idea. Every week, we take a full backup of the entire database. And then for the rest of that week, we take an incremental backup every 5 minutes. Which means that if a health center was to burn to the ground, we would lose only the data that happened within 5 minutes of the fire starting. I think that's a good thing. So Barman is cool. I think you should use it if you use Postgres. Back up all instances, as I said. Celery. Celery is a message queuing thingamajig. I mean, it's weird. Yeah, it's weird because, so I've used Celery for a chat server before. So as users send messages, they queue up in Celery and they get distributed to where they need to go. I've also used Celery for background jobs. So you have a web app and user clicks a link, and that link is supposed to start a process that maybe sends an email to 100 people and does some other stuff. And you don't want that web request to be sitting there waiting for all of that to happen. So when you hit the link, the web server or the web app sends a message to Celery, and then later on now, maybe on a cron job or something, Celery will allow you to start up back right at that point in code and continue running. So you'd send your messages at that point or create that zip file at that point and then send an email to the user. We use Celery as an integral part of what we call the Synchro engine. So Synchro engine works as follows. You go to health center in Santa Cruz. Within a half hour after you're seen by the doctor, that all information entered by the doctor is sent off to the ministry using Synchro. And it's not sent as like database replication. This is happening at a level much higher up than a database. So it means if, for example, there was an error in the Santa Cruz instance, so the installation of Triton in Santa Cruz, let's say there was a code error in it, and that code error caused an invalid record to be written to the Santa Cruz database. Because the synchronization is happening at the level of the application layer, at the level of the middleware, that invalid data won't get written to the master server. And if somebody goes to say, if that same patient now goes to a different facility, when that different facility tries to import their record, they'll get everything except that invalid record. Make sense? So Celery in this case, in our case, we use it for just handing the message. So doctor writes his notes, record is saved, that record is then handed to Celery, next record is handed to Celery, well, a reference to the record is handed to Celery, and then on a schedule, every half hour, something comes up, ships off all of these records to the ministry. Also quite cool, I think. Wow. So, I actually don't have much more, but I could tell you more about what we do, how we do it. I think Dr. Folcom has a question. Yes. Numbers, in terms of what? All right, so the first instance, so remember I told you we we started a pilot project. And you see, when you have free software and there's no marketing department, it means that the only people that hear about it are the people that you tell about it. The other problem with free software is that a lot of people, especially those who speak English, think the word free means no money. So I kind of wish in English we had a word like libre, like that word in French, where it means freedom, not no money. So 2014, so June, I don't really like the term open source, to be honest with you. And no, not that. I've just seen people bastardize it a lot, like Tiny ERP is an example of horrible usage of the term open source. So yeah, for that reason I don't like it. But I'm answering your question. So I joined the team in 2014. In June 2014, by September 2014, we installed the first instance. We installed a second in October. And then we ran out of computers, as in all the computers that we had bought to use for the pilot, we ended the first set, and it's time to buy more computers. So documentation started, and the request was submitted to procurement in about January of 2015 to purchase 45 computers. We finally got those computers last month. I won't call any names, nor will I call any positions to say who was responsible for that horrible lag. But let's just say that, remember I told you in 2012 we hadn't heard from Heron at all? Well, let's just say that they made a presentation since, like in 2015, and so did about 5 other companies, 2 of them from India. There are people coming, they want to replace this free software foolishness that we're doing. And they want the government to pay them to do it. And so there are some powers that would prefer to just buy something from some guy. They think that what we're doing is stupid. I completely disagree, or I would have stopped. So that's the first problem. We've had some roadblocks, but I think we've been able to convince a few people, and things are rolling now, right? So at the end of 2014, we had done 2 health centers. By the end of 2015, we had done 2 health centers and 1 hospital. By summer 2016, we still only had 1 hospital. But we also had the National Epidemiology Unit that was using the Class 1 notifications thing. And that gave us a lot of visibility within the ministry. And through that visibility, we were kind of mandated to make something happen for the new government. Because election February, new government come in, new minister come with new plans, and the new minister says he's going to reduce waiting times in hospital. And so we were told to do something to make waiting times shorter. Whatever, do something. So we added a triage module to EPAS. And that triage module is now being used in Bustamante Hospital. And it has cut the time between entering the door and being seen by a doctor, has cut that time by about 10% currently. But there are other issues happening here. So I expect that we should be able to cut that time more in the coming weeks. So Bustamante is the 2nd largest instance in terms of the number of patients. They have about 11,000 patients in it. The largest instance is the first health center we did in Santa Cruz. They have, last time I checked was a couple of days ago, they had about 17,000 patients. And of that 17,000 patients, or among those 17,000 patients, you're looking at maybe about 6 each in terms of clinical encounters. So, I don't know, do the math. Yeah, about 100,000 encounters. Quite a lot, actually. And so, another place the second health center we did was Westmoreland. They have power cuts daily. And I mean daily power cuts. It is ridiculous. I need to carry UPS down there actually. Yeah, one of their UPS is dead. I just remembered. Yeah. So that they're working. And then another thing that we're doing, that none of these foreigners were promoting, is we have a local server in each place that we're doing an installation. So it means, like in Darlington, for example, they lost their network connection one Sunday night, and it didn't come back until 2 weeks later. It took the staff in the health center 3 days to realize that they had no network, meaning network going out of the health center, because they come to work and EPAS works, everything works. What doesn't work is if they try to go to the internet. That's not working. So the way we've done installation is kind of cool, I think. That Darlington place, they have about 9,000 patients, 8 or 9,000 patients. So it's going. Yeah, we're at that section. Go on.
So with like the system being in place and like the data you guys have built, I know Jamaica is doing this whole open data thing. Suppose it. How does this system like contribute to making the data about healthcare in Jamaica more accessible? You guys, I know you said you have an API, but that seems to be more like communication.
Internal. Yeah, that's internal. It's not even communication between hospitals. So, yeah. So what we use the API for is, the Triton itself is an application framework. It's not a web application framework. So in order to use Triton, you actually have to install a Triton client on each client device, right? And the Triton client is like many ERP clients, kind of rigid in terms of you can put a field here and you can put a field beside it, but little things like you'd have a field label and you have a little tiny label in brackets that you can click on. We can't do that. So what we're using, the main reason we built the API was for the notifications thing, and so we could deliver a web interface for specialists. So like a dental hygienist, all she's doing is cleaning and scaling and give advice on how to take care of your teeth, and she's never going to remove a tooth, and so her job is kind of the same thing over and over. So I give her a simple web interface. She's just clicking, okay, I did that for that patient, click that for that patient, instead of having to go through the regular interface and add signs and add a procedure. Make sense? So we're using the API as a way to simplify the interface for some people that don't need the full thing. Now, as for the question you asked, how does it contribute to the open data thing? One way is if they ask for data, they can actually get it now, because we just run a query. But more advanced than that, we're working on what we call the analytics engine. It's still a toss-up as to whether we use BERT or Pentaho or one of those things to interrogate the master server, not the server in each health center, but the master server to where all data is synchronized, to interrogate that data to allow you to do reporting and to get trends and analysis and actual raw data. And the way that's being done is to guarantee, the way we're doing it is to guarantee that your data, if your data becomes a part of some data set that's used in research, nobody can use it to identify you. So all data that leaves the ministry is anonymized, always. Yes, sir. Yes, we have released portions of what we've made as open source. The next version, because we're at what we call EPAS 2 right now. EPAS 1 was based on Triton 3.2 and GNU Health 2.4. Current version of EPAS 2.0 is based on GNU Health 2.8 and Triton 3.4. The next version of EPAS, we're jumping over a few Triton versions and we're going all the way to Triton 4.2, and we're forking GNU Health. We're forking it because looking over our code base, we realized that a lot of what we have done in our code base is to fix issues in their code base. So all of that fork will be open source. We already have a GitHub page. There's not much there. It's mohjm, github.com/moh-jm. What's there now is your computer really saves battery. What's on our GitHub page now is one Triton module that we made. It's called Health Encounter. And Health Encounter module is designed to replace the patient encounter system that came with GNU Health. So GNU Health's patient encounter system allows for a doctor to go in and put in all the vital signs and putting signs and symptoms and diagnosis and secondary condition and all of those things, and then sign it when he's finished. But in none of our facilities do you ever get seen by a single person. Not one. If you go to health center for a flu, for example, the first thing that's going to happen is that a community health aide is going to check your height and your weight. And then a nurse is going to take your vital signs, your blood pressure and your temperature and stuff. And this is all happening before you see the doctor. So right away, that's 3 people that's going to deal with this one patient. And all 3 people need to have somewhere to sign. All 3 people need to have their own login and have their own space to write, and they shouldn't step on each other's toes. So that's what Health Encounter facilitates. So we have these different components. So the CHA, the community health aide, would add the anthropometric component and put in your height and weight and hit the sign button. And then the nurse would put in the nursing component and put in all of her value, all of her inputs, and save that. And when you get to doctor can see which nurse it was that dealt with you, what the nurse wrote when the nurse dealt with you, and the doctor has a space for his or her own notes. We haven't started using digital signatures yet, but that is in the pipeline. That is like a definite to come. So we already have those buttons that people are clicking that says sign. Only thing left is for the little pop-up to come up and say, give me the password for your private key. And we have been sensitizing users to that. Any other questions? Every health center has its own database. Every hospital has its own database in the facility. Which means the only thing a local facility needs to continue operating is electricity. Right, so that's the synchro engine I mentioned earlier, where within a half hour after being seen in one facility, your data gets synchronized back to the ministry. That's what we're using Celery for, actually. Yes. Barman is for backup. So what we take with Barman is this database as it is right now. What we do with Synchro is this record as it has been changed. So with Synchro, we can get information like which other facilities does this record exist in? So if you go to one health center, so I keep mentioning Santa Cruz because it's like one of our examples. It is probably the most advanced health center in Ireland now. Within another couple months, they are threatening to go completely paperless because all practitioners in the health center now have computers on their desks. And we've installed scanners and they're scanning whatever comes in on paper and that kind of stuff. So within a few minutes after you're seen in this health center, your data is sent off to the ministry. But it is just the entry that was just done that is sent off. And if you go to another facility, we have a menu item called master index. So they search for you in the master index and find you. And when they're searching master index, they're searching the master server. They find you there and say, import patient. And when they import you, what they get is the patient record, your name, address, other demographic information, but they also get every encounter that you've been in at every other facility. So effectively, your entire record now lives in this new facility. but it is also in the previous facility that you used to go to. Yes, sir.
Can I request access to my own record?
Yes, always. Even right now on paper. You can always request access to your own record. You will not get access to our computer system, however, you will get a printout. If that's okay. You see, the legal gray area with that is that the record itself is owned by the facility, but the information in the record is yours. So, what does that mean? All right. So in the paper world, it means it's my paper, and it's my ink. My meaning the facility. Right. So it's my paper and my ink, but you know, it's your information. Yeah. As told.
A couple of things. First of all, we have an open space.
Oh, cool.
Where I don't know if you'll be here for it.
Yeah, man. I can stick around.
But we're having lunch now, so you can just
Chat and talk. Chat and eat.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not trying to you know, dampen anything.
Oh, and we're hiring. FYI.